Hey everyone, welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're going to break down a really cool piece of the equal effect ecosystem. Think of it as the smart traffic director for your server. It's called the HttpMultiplex. All right, so to really get this, let's start with a question that, every single web developer has to deal with. Picture this. Your server is getting hit with all sorts of requests at once. One person wants user data, another is asking for products, and then boom, a big GraphQL query comes in. So how in the world does one server figure out where to send all of these different requests to make sure everyone gets the right answer? Well, that's where our main analogy for today comes into play. The absolute best way to picture this is to imagine a really sharp traffic cop. They're standing right in the middle of a busy intersection inside your app. Their job, their only job, is to look at every single car or, every single request and wave it down the correct street. No confusion, no traffic jams. So what do we call this thing? In the Effect platform, our super smart traffic cop is called the HttpMultiplex. Now, you might also hear people call it the app selector. And honestly, that's a perfect nickname. Why? Because that's literally all it does. It selects the right little app to handle whatever request just came in. Okay, so what is it, officially? Well, HttpMultiplex is what we call a high-level router. Its main gig is to just sit there at the front door of your server and check out every single request that comes knocking. This is so important because it makes sure that a call to, say, your API endpoint gets handled by your API code, and a totally different call to your GraphQL endpoint goes to the GraphQL code. It just keeps everything neat and tidy, No more spaghetti code where everything gets mixed up. So the big question is, how does it pull off this routing magic? You'd probably think it involves some crazy, complicated configuration file, right? But nope. The real beauty of HttpMultiplex is just how simple it is. It's all built on a super straightforward idea, a list of pairs. All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty. We're going to look at the actual mechanism and see how it carves out a clear path for every single request. And trust me, getting this part is pretty much the key to really mastering how Effect handles logic on the server. So at its core, the multiplexer is really just a list, an ordered list to be specific. And every single item in that list is a simple little pair. You have a rule and you have an action. When a request shows up, the multiplexer just starts at the top of the list and checks the rule. Does it match? Nope. Okay, next one. Does this one match? Yes. And that's it. The very first one that matches wins. The multiplexer then hands the request over to that rule's action and boom, its job is over. Okay, so this duo, the predicate and the app, this is the real heart and soul of the whole system. They work together like a perfect team. So let's break down exactly what each partner does. First up, we've got the predicate. This is basically our traffic cops rulebook. It's just a simple function, and all it does is look at a request and ask a yes or no question. Something like, hey, does this URL start with /API, or is this a post request? It's important to remember it doesn't actually do anything to the request. It just makes a decision. That's it. Now, what happens if that predicate says yes? Well, the request is immediately passed off to its partner in crime, the HTTP app. And the easiest way to think of an HTTP app is as a tiny, self-contained application. It has everything it needs, all the logic, to handle that one specific kind of request and spit out a response. And it does this all on its own, completely separate from any other app. And this really shows you the core relationship, right? It's always a super clear connection. One specific rule is tied to one specific action. So if your rule, your predicate, is asking, does the URL start with /API, then its partner is going to be the HTTP app that knows how to handle API requests. Simple. If the rule asks, is the path exactly /GraphQL, then its partner is the app that runs your GraphQL queries. It's a beautifully clean one-to-one mapping. Okay, so let's just walk through the whole thing from start to finish. Step 1. A request comes in. The multiplexer immediately looks at the very first rule in its list. Does it match? Nope. Okay, no problem. It just moves on to the second one. It keeps doing this, going down the list, until, aha, it finds a predicate that says, yep, this is the one. The second it finds that very first match, it just stops. It doesn't look any further. It grabs that predicate's HTTP app partner and runs it. Done. So we've covered the how. We know how it works. But that leads to the really big question. Why? Why is this pattern so important? What makes it a key ingredient for building solid, modern apps? So let's just compare two different ways of building a server. On one side, you've got your classic monolith. You know the type. One massive application that tries to do everything. Your code for handling users, products, payments, it's all tangled up in one big ball of yarn. You try to change one little thing, and you're terrified you might break something totally unrelated. But then, on the other side, you have the multiplexed server. Here, you've got these small, specialized apps that are just put together. The logic is clean, it's separate, and it's just so much easier to work with. When you boil it all down, this approach really gives you 4 huge wins. First, modularity. You can chop up a big, scary application into small, manageable pieces. Second, composition. You can mix and match different apps like they're Lego bricks. Want a REST API and a GraphQL server in the same project? Easy. Third, you get clarity. Your routing rules live in one place, and your actual business logic lives somewhere else. No more mess. And finally, testability. This is a big one. You can test each of these little HTTP apps all by themselves in total isolation. Here's another way to think about it. Imagine your server is an orchestra. Each HTTP app is a different section, right? You've got your strings over here, your brass over there, the percussion in the back. Well, the HTTP multiplex is the conductor. It doesn't play a single note itself, but it knows exactly when to point to the strings, when to bring in the brass. It's the one coordinating everything to create this amazing, complex piece of music out of all these simple, individual parts. So, I want to leave you with one final thought to chew on. Think about the projects you're working on right now, or maybe the ones you're dreaming up. How could this really simple but powerful pattern, this idea of just pairing a rule with an action, how could that help you? Could it simplify your routing, clean up your code, and ultimately help you build servers that are just plain better and easier to maintain?